The heart monitor dropped to 20, and Nurse Elena Marsh froze with her hand still on the oxygen line, because in that exact second, something started clawing at the ICU door. She turned. A golden retriever stood on its hind legs outside the glass, paws streaked with mud, scratching hard enough to leave marks. His collar tag caught the hallway light. Elena's mind went to two places at once: the dying man behind her, and the dog who had no business being inside a hospital. The man in the bed was Walter Combs, 78 years old, a retired mechanic who had spent 40 years fixing other people's engines for less than he was worth. No family had visited him in 3 days. The chart on the wall said no next of kin listed. To the hospital, he was just room ICU 3, a body the machines were keeping alive one number at a time. But the dog knew him, and the dog was not leaving. Elena had been a nurse for 11 years, long enough to trust her instincts over her training sometimes. Instinct told her something was wrong, not with the monitors but with the moment itself. She stepped toward the door, and the golden retriever's scratching turned frantic. His bark muffled through the glass like he was trying to say a word he didn't have. The vitals kept sliding. 68, 97, 20. The attending physician, Dr. Reyes, a man with a reputation for making fast, cold decisions, had already signed the paperwork sitting on the counter. Comfort care only. No family to object. No one left to say wait. Elena had 10 minutes before he came back to finalize it. If a story like this moves you, if you still believe an animal can sense what machines can't, and that one person choosing to look closer can change everything, hit like and subscribe now, because the moment that matters most is still ahead of you. She opened the door. The dog didn't run past her. He walked straight to Walter's bed and pressed his nose against the old man's limp hand, whining low in his throat. Elena checked the chart again. Emergency contact. None. Next of kin, none. But dogs don't show up outside ICU doors by accident, muddy and desperate, unless somebody let them out of somewhere they weren't supposed to leave. She called security. What she learned in the next 90 seconds changed everything. The dog's name was Biscuit. He belonged to Walter, confirmed by a groundskeeper who recognized him from the trailer park 2 miles down the road, where Walter had lived alone since his wife passed. Biscuit had escaped through a torn fence panel, according to a neighbor, and somehow crossed 2 busy streets and a parking garage to end up scratching at this exact door, on this exact floor, at this exact hour. Elena stared at the readings. 68 and falling. She had seen patients decline like this before, quietly, permanently. But something about the dog's persistence made her stay 1 more minute instead of stepping back to let the paperwork happen on schedule. She leaned close to Walter's ear. "Your dog is here," she said. "He found you." The monitor spiked. Just slightly. A flicker most nurses would dismiss as noise. Elena didn't dismiss it. She had learned, over 11 years, that dismissed flickers were sometimes the only warning a body gives before it tries, one last time, to hold on. This is the part of the story you didn't expect. The part where a scared nurse and a muddy dog become the only 2 people in the building willing to fight for a man everyone else had already given up on. The biggest moment hasn't happened yet. Stay with me. Dr. Reyes returned to find Elena delaying the paperwork, the dog curled against Walter's side despite hospital policy, and a reading on the monitor that hadn't been there 20 minutes earlier, a faint but real improvement in oxygen saturation. He wasn't pleased. Rules existed for reasons. But even he paused at the sight of an old man's fingers curling, just barely, into golden fur. "He's still declining," Reyes said. "This changes nothing." "It's already changed something," Elena answered. He responded. For the first time in 3 days, he responded. What no one in that room knew yet was the story behind Walter and Biscuit. A story Elena would only learn a week later, from the same groundskeeper. Years earlier, Walter had found Biscuit as a starving stray behind his shop, ribs showing, one back leg broken from being hit by a car. Most men would have called animal control. Walter set the leg himself with scrap wood and gauze, fed him from his own plate for 2 months, and never once regretted the cost. He always said the dog remembered kindness longer than most people did. Now, that memory was the only thing standing between Walter and a signature on a form. Elena refused to let Reyes finalize the order that night. She documented the improvement, called in a second physician, and stayed 2 hours past her shift holding Walter's hand while Biscuit slept against his legs. By morning, Walter's numbers had stabilized enough to reconsider everything. 2 weeks later, he opened his eyes and asked, in a hoarse whisper, where his dog was. He recovered slowly, but he recovered. And when he left the hospital a month later, Biscuit walked out beside him on a leash Elena had bought herself, because some things are worth showing up for even after your shift ends. Walter never forgot what almost happened, and neither did Elena. She kept a photo of that ICU door taped inside her locker, muddy paw prints and all, as a reminder that instincts are worth trusting, that overlooked people are never as alone as they seem, and that sometimes the smallest, most stubborn act of love is the only thing loud enough to be heard over a fading heartbeat. If this story reminded you that hope still shows up in the strangest, most unexpected ways, subscribe for more true-to-life stories about the quiet heroes the world almost missed.